On today's video, we're leaving Clemson, South Carolina. It's a college football special. I made it up. I thought it was really good. And we're going to talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes. I know us Clemson fans hate the guys. I know for some of you guys older than me, when there was only 3 channels, they were the only team you could watch. Them and Notre Dame, and that's why you hate them so much. But to talk about this team, I'm bringing on Eric Boggs from the Ohio podcast. Appreciate him being here, and it's going to be here live on Clemson Football Live. I'm very excited to bring him on. Hey, folks, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I hope you will. Remember, for all you cheapskates, it's free. And it's the easiest way to support the channel. Also, there's a join button below this video. If you want to support on a monthly basis, it's $3 or $5. And you're like, $3 or $5? Literally, that's the tier I set up. It's so cheap. A lot of my subscribers are like, man, I don't even notice it coming out of my bank account. I do appreciate that. And also the College Huddle. You need to check out the College Huddle. Eric, my man, here I'm about to bring on here in just a second, invited me to be part of the College Huddle. Listen, this is a group of YouTubers and podcasters who represents their school. So there's no strings attached over here telling me what to say and what not to say, and don't criticize this person that much or whatever. No. Or the sponsors are going to get mad. The press credentials will be revoked. No. We do what we do. And even if we're wrong, we're at least emphatic about it, and we have a good time. So before I'm even here, I want to say something to my crew of people. And Ohio State fans, just hang on. I'm going to shut up in just a second, but I want to say this to my subscribers and usual viewers. I know some of you are going to be like, dude, this is Clemson Football Live. What are you doing talking about Ohio State? You know, I knew that you were upset about some of the things that went on in Clemson, but you're now talking about Ohio State. Folks, it is really good for any fan base, for any group of fans, to get outside of their ecosystem and look at other teams. Why? Because it can tell you where your team stands. I know you're already bringing up history and all we've done, and we've beat Ohio State blah, blah, blah times, and yet, folks, now is more important than ever. So that's the reason I'm bringing on someone else. Plus, they're just good people. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up and bring on Eric Boggs. Man, thanks for joining me tonight.
Brian, thank you so much for having me on Clemson Football Live. I've been following the channel. You're one of my favorite personalities on YouTube, you and John Kennedy. I love it, man. Listen, I don't love your team, but I love you. and that makes it all right, and it makes it watchable sometimes. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk football with you, brother.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to dive right in since I gave like that preface that was so long. Ohio State. There's so many low hanging fruit topics to talk about. Everybody's upset at Ryan Day, though. From an outsider looking in, Ryan Day. We want our angry Ryan Day. Yes, he has the majestic beard that we all know he dyes. He dyes it jet Sharpie black.
Natural, baby.
All natural. Yeah, that's what his stylist says. But I mean, the guy hasn't wrecked anything. Like, from an outsider looking in, I can see the frustration. Trust me, he hasn't wrecked anything. You lose Kyle McCord to Syracuse. You return, 9 starters on the defense, 7 on the offense. You guys recruit out the wazoo. You've got this whole mini super conference in the Big Ten, and y'all are still picked by Phil Steele and Athlon as number 2 preseason, which means y'all make a really good run to play Georgia in the national championship. What is the feeling in Columbus? Like, the real feeling, not like, oh, I'm supposed to say this, and I know you're not going to do that. What's the real feeling about this 2024 season and a potential run at a national championship?
I think Denzel Burke said it best when he said the reason why I came back to Ohio State and not go to the NFL is because this year it's natty or bust. This team is not beaten the rival from Ann Arbor, the team up north, as we like to call them. These seniors have never beaten them. They don't have a pair of gold pants, which is something I can explain to you here in a little bit. And they want to do that. They've not won the Big Ten, which was something that was just a birthright for Ohio State for the last 20 years. And They haven't won a national championship, obviously, because they haven't accomplished those first 2 goals. And so they have set the bar. The players have set the bar, not the fans. The players have set the bar that it's natty or bust. And we're just along for the ride, Brian. That's all we're doing, man. So that's the feeling. Now, is there some anxiety that comes along with that? You betcha. You betcha. Come that last game in November, unless they fall off the tracks or the NCAA decides to grow a pair and do what they should have done last year and drop the hammer on that program, uh, there's always going to be a little bit of anxiety because when that game happens, you throw the records out, man. They don't mean anything. I can't tell you, Brian, how many times growing up in the 1990s, Ohio State had the best roster in college football. And somehow we would get to the end of the year and that team from Ann Arbor would ruin our season and spoil everything. We would drop the ball time and time again. And there's a little bit of that 1990s feeling going around with Ryan Day. Not that I would, but my co host calls him Cooper 2.0, John Cooper 2.0. This is the same thing that John Cooper would do. He'd have great rosters. He would recruit really well. He would have all the momentum. We would be 1 or 2 in the AP poll going into that game and somehow drop the ball and then go lose the bowl game. And so until we cross the finish line, there's always going to be a little bit of a pit in our stomach of what might happen if we can't accomplish our goals. But I think we're going to see exactly what this team is made of when they go out to Eugene, Oregon early on in the conference schedule and we play the Ducks on the road. That's going to be a top 5 matchup. Obviously, it's probably going to be one of the bigger games of the year. And if Ohio State can come out of Eugene in a hostile environment with a nice victory, then I think we're on our way to accomplishing those goals and getting that chance to have that rematch with Georgia. That absolutely needs to happen because of whether they want to admit it or not, those refs took that game away from us. That was targeting. I will go to my grave, Brian, preaching that was targeting on Marvin Harrison Jr. They even threw the flag, Brian. They threw it. They knew it, and they picked it up.
Well, Homers. My friend, I'm far from a Buckeye and I'm far from a Bulldog, but as an onlooker into that game with C.J. Stroud, that was the real national championship, by the way. That was the real national championship. And, you had 2 major players. One didn't even start the game. The other one got hurt, and y'all still almost beat them. So I know that y'all would like to get back, like to get some payback on that. So let's talk about Ryan Day for just a second.
Sure.
I was on your show a couple of months ago when Ryan Day was spotted in Clemson, South Carolina. I even had Ohio State fans. This was my favorite one. He was like, "Hey, they're going to take your YouTube channel away from you. You keep doing stuff like this." I was like, "What? Okay, this is great."
Ohio State is?
It was an Ohio State guy. But anyway.
Hey, listen. Ohio State took my first logo away from me.
Really?
And my podcast name. Yeah, I've been sued by Ohio State.
Oh, well, that's good.
Well, not really. Cease and assist. It's kind of like don't or we will, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm gonna move on from that because I'd love to go down that rabbit trail. But, Ryan Day was in Clemson with his son, just touring the campus and everything. And that's very common for coaches to do that, sure. Everywhere. So, but Ryan Day has faced a lot of heat. But I'm sitting here, I'm looking at your past results. Okay, sure. 2019, you were 13-1. 2020, 7-1. That whole weird year that I wish had never happened.
Yep.
2021, you're 11-2. You're 11-2. You're 11-2. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I get this as a Clemson fan because we have something weird going on down here, right? The whole country. In fact, I did a video on Dabo the other day, and I said he's the most talked about coach in sports. He really is because everybody's trying to figure out the transfer portal and what's happening and blah blah blah. So I get what it's like to still have a seemingly successful team. If Ryan Day blows it against Michigan, which they have a new head coach, and maybe he blows it in another game. Let's just say that Oregon comes out and lays the hammer on him. Do you guys fire him? I mean, is it at that place that you're like, look, we're not going to Mark Rick this thing. You're done.
No. And here's why. Now, if you're asking, are you asking me personally, or are you asking like the reality of it?
Okay, so would you want him to be fired, and then the reality of it?
Okay. Let's start with, would I want him to be fired? No. Um unless we lose again, then yes. But um I really like Ryan Day as a human being. I think he's a phenomenal man. He's a man of faith. He's a man, a leader of men, and I think he's a tremendous father. I think he's a great example for young men. A lot of people don't know what he does for mental health. He is a champion of mental health. Harry Miller, who was a highly recruited uh, offensive lineman, um, all of a sudden stopped playing, and we were like, what's the injury? And he never said anything. After the season, it comes out that Harry Miller was dealing with some serious mental issues and was contemplating suicide. And Ryan Day shielded and protected that young man. And really, Harry talks about how much Ryan's influence on him saved his life. These are things that, ESPN, they might run a nice little piece about it when they're at game day or something. But when it comes down to it, 11-2, or he saves Harry Miller's life. Yeah, I would say saving a kid's life is much more important than going 11-2. So I'm rooting like heck that he can get over the hump. He's been so close. He's been to the college football playoff 3 times. He's won a college football playoff game. He's been to the national championship. He's won a Big Ten title already. And I know all the arguments. He's done it with Urban's players. He's done this without Urban's players the last couple of years. He just hasn't gotten over the hump of beating the team up north, winning the Big Ten the last several years, and then getting to the playoff and finishing the job. He's just so close. And really, football is a game of inches. And I think having all of those stars come back who could have went to the NFL really is giving him confidence. And then there's some other things about it that I think we can get into with Chip Kelly and things down the road. But do I want him fired? No. I'm gonna root like heck that he wins. But if he can't beat that team up north with this roster, with all these players coming back, then you have to question if he can do it at that point. Now, will he? No. Here's why. Longtime athletic director Gene Smith is retiring this month. In fact, I think like this week is his last week. Ross Bjork, who was the Texas A&M athletic director, formerly of Ole Miss, is the new athletic director. That's going to buy him another year at least, in my opinion. No matter what happens this season, I don't think Ross Bjork comes in and fires him in the first year. Gene Smith might have had to fire him if he loses 4 straight times to your rival. I don't know that Ross Bjork is going to approach that the same way that Gene Smith might have had to. And so that's why I say I don't think, given what we know, that what would if the unthinkable happens and he can't beat that team up north again, I think he's safe for another year from the athletic department and from Ross Bjork firing him.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because it's always good to hear that a guy is a good guy and that he's actually helping his players. And of course, there's friction there because I brought up Mark Richt. Everybody always said Mark Richt was a really good guy. Like if you like Mark Richt
He was, yeah,
was a good person. Dabo Swinney. Now here's the thing: Dabo Swinney has that Ryan Day doesn't. He has 2 national championships and he has all of that success and stuff. But as you begin to lose games that if you really track down to coaching malfeasance, as I like to call it, I know you watch my show. I use that term a lot for you new viewers who are here because of Eric. Coaching malfeasance is when a coach holds their middle finger up to the fundamentals of football, and the fundamentals of football says, "Oh no, you don't! You don't do that to me. You're going to lose this game." And we saw Cristobal do it this year against Georgia Tech, cost him. We seen Clemson blow it, especially against Miami and North Carolina State. If you go back and watch those games, it really doesn't make sense. So that's how I measure coaching malfeasance. So even if Ryan Day is a wonderful person, if you can't beat your rival, that's one. And then if there's some games you're sitting there going, what just happened? And especially with a roster like this, and I'm looking at your schedule, we'll get into that in just a second. It's not going to look good for you. So let's talk about your transfer quarterback, Will Howard. The guy's coming in from Kansas State, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, Will Howard comes in. You have Travion Henderson at running back. The guy was slicing and dicing people last year. You had Judkins come in from Ole Miss. I mean, I'm looking at this, and I know you lost Marvin Harrison Jr. Guy was unbelievable. But you guys return, and of course I'm using Phil Steele's book just to see this because I'm not an Ohio State expert. You are, but you guys have a lot of your team returning. Let's talk about the quarterback. Let's talk about Henderson, and then let's kind of dive into some players on the offensive side of the football that us passerbys we may not know about.
So, Will Howard, can I start with Kyle McCord first, Brian?
Go for it.
Okay, so I don't know if you Clemson fans know the story here.
No.
Okay, Kyle McCord has a daddy who, can we just say, is a helicopter parent? I think that's a fair statement. Fair explanation of the kind of person he is. Kyle McCord walks into Ryan Day's office following the loss in Ann Arbor and wants Ryan to guarantee that Kyle will be the starter in 2024 after there was a quarterback competition to start the season with Devin Brown. And Kyle kind of won the position from two reasons. Devin got an injury, and then Devin got hurt again during the season, and it was all she wrote. Plus, he had the fourth quarter game-winning drive in South Bend, Indiana, and that sealed the deal, right? Couldn't go back from there. But however, Devin was getting like goal line plays as quarterback. They would take Kyle out and bring Devin in because he offered that extra ability for a quarterback to scramble and run the read option that Kyle just couldn't do. Ryan said, no, I'm not going to guarantee that he's going to be the starter in 2024. And not only am I not going to guarantee he's not going to be the starter in 2024, I'm not going to guarantee he's going to be starter for the bowl game. He's going to have to earn it. And so Kyle McCord and his daddy took their ball and left and went to Syracuse. Good luck in upstate New York, my friend. So, yeah, Ohio State fans are kind of like, good riddance. Not a good team leader. On the sidelines, a lot of times would sit by himself, not with the offensive players. I understand sometimes you need to get away and clear your headspace, but not as consistently as he was. You go back and watch the games, he'd be coming off the field, and Ryan Day would be in his ear hole the whole time because he's just missing wide open wide receivers. He would get locked on Marvin Harrison Jr., and I understand. Look, when you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. on your team, it's easy to get locked on that guy. But sometimes there's other people who are open in the offensive plays that Ryan Day designed in the passing attack that he was just missing. And so he would not guarantee him the starting position. So that's why Kyle McCord is not at Ohio State right now. So in comes, Will Howard. It is another quarterback competition, just to be straight up honest with you. I went to the spring game. We've got not one, not two, not three, not four. We have 5 quarterbacks on this team. And we thought for sure we would lose at least one, if not 2 of them to the transfer portal. They all here, Brian. They all stayed, which is incredible. Blew my mind, right? And there is no guarantee that Will Howard is going to get that starting position. Ryan Day is going to. Now, I will say this. I think Will gets every opportunity to win the position and prove that he's the guy. But if it's obvious one of these other quarterbacks, including one of the freshmen who we stole from Alabama after Nick Saban decided to retire, if one of them were to decide or to grab the bull by the horns and take this thing and become the starting quarterback for Ohio State, even if it is a freshman, I think Ryan Day is going to be so be it. I got listen. I'm not here to play nice guy. I've got to win. I've got to win right now. He understands that. These seniors understand that. Okay, and so if it ends up being Julian Sane, so be it. Let the best guy play. I think that's where Ryan Day's at with the quarterback situation right now, and it's going to be incredibly interesting this fall camp, summer camp, who gets that opportunity first. If we go into game 1, Brian, and we're going to let them both play, I think that's a bad sign. And if that happens, don't be shocked if by the end of the season one of the freshmen aren't playing.
Yeah. Because I'm looking at Devin Brown, and transparently for all the Ohio State fans, I'm looking at a media guide, but I really want to hear everything that Eric has to say as a true Ohio State fan. But when I forgot that Julian Sayin went to you guys, Aaron Nolan went to you guys, and I just want to pause here and just say this to my Clemson family who may or may not be watching this. You see, you can have multiple really good quarterbacks on the team. Yeah, you can.
You know how?
Yeah, how?
NIL,
of course,
and player development, right? Ryan Day, since he took over as offensive coordinator at Ohio State, has put 3 consecutive until last year, 3 consecutive starting quarterbacks into the NFL draft. That's not that you don't just mistakenly let that happen. Like, the dude knows how to develop quarterbacks. That is his forte.
Mm-hmm. So right there, I know I was the one who's brought up Travion Henderson. Of course, he's talented. Emeka Egbuka, I mean, good grief, what a freak. You have Jeremiah Smith.
Have you seen this kid? Jeremiah Smith?
I've heard about him. I have heard about how great he is. I've heard how great he is. Please talk.
Brian,
tell me about it.
Listen. I'll be the first person to pull the reins back on, say, Buckeye fans, say, whoa, slow down. He's a freshman, right? This cat is just different. He is built different. He is Brian Hartline, the wide receiver coach at Ohio State. Not only is he a great recruiter, he's a great developer. And he's brutally honest with these guys. Like, he'll straight up tell you, you're not ready. And for whatever reason, he's so giddy about this kid because not only of all his physical traits that he brings, he's strong, he's fast, he's tall, he's athletic. He knows how to high point the ball. He can run every route. He can play multiple wide receiver positions. He's like, his mental makeup is what he loves about the kid. I'm telling you, there was another, and this might be a name some of your older listeners might remember. There was another cat that played at Ohio State who was built like this guy, who was really good, named David Boston.
Yeah.
Okay. This is David Boston, except he's David Boston already, and he's a freshman. That's not supposed to happen. It's like God just looked down and is like, I'm going to make the perfect wide receiver, and he's going to wear scarlet and gray.
And he's what, 6'3", 200, 205, somewhere in there?
He could be 210 by now. I mean, we saw, the media puts out videos all the time,
Sure.
This kid, when they want to say, hey, look at our strength and conditioning development, they're showing Jeremiah Smith because, he's been on campus since January, and the dude looks like a superhero.
Yeah. He was the number 1 wide receiver in the country coming out of high school. Am I correct?
Yeah, he's number 1 player in the country. Yeah.
Number 1 player in the country. So this is all good, but it goes back to the initial statement that you were talking about earlier, that if Ryan Day can't win with this team,
expectations, baby.
I mean, and it's not like, and once again, I'm not dogging on my own team, but we have problems on the offensive side of the football, and a lot of what you're talking about is what we're dealing with. And We have a quarterback room where if our starter goes down, he's already struggling due to development issues, and I take up for him all the time. It's development issues, and an offensive line that's just struggled. But you guys literally have at least 4 starters at quarterback. You could
Yeah.
have any of those guys could play
Listen,
easily.
Aaron Nolan is supposed to be the 5th guy on the depth chart. He
Yeah,
had the best spring game out of anybody, in my opinion.
yeah,
He was
yeah.
dropping dimes and taking off and running and looked awesome. Yeah, but don't think for a second that we have a glaring issue on this football team.
Tell me.
Offensive line.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, if this is a big if Justin Fry, the offensive line coach, who's good friends with Ryan Day, and that might be part of the problem.
That's yeah.
If he can develop these guys, because we have, 3 returning starters plus McLaughlin from Alabama who came in,
Hmm.
you know, if he can develop the offensive line and they can take a step forward, then then that shouldn't be as big of an issue as it was. But if you want to see what a bad offensive line how it can wreck a team, go back and watch the Cotton Bowl against Missouri last year. We scored 3 points. Now I understand we didn't, we had first time starting quarterback. He gets injured early in the game. We go to our backup quarterback, and he was not ready to play at all. He literally looked like the deer that my son ran over last week. He came out in the road and was like, I don't know what to do. Like, it was bad. It was bad. It was terrible, Brian. Offensive line they had guys out of position. You know, it was sad. If that can't get fixed, I don't care how good our wide receivers are. I don't care how fast Travion Henderson can run. If they can't make holes and they can't protect the quarterback, then we're still going to win football games because we're like Clemson. We got great defense, a phenomenal defense. But that offensive line is the question mark. That's what everybody's got highlighted. Everybody's talking about it here in Ohio. Can they take the next step?
Well, the game is really won in the trenches. I
Oh,
mean, it
trust me.
really
Yeah.
is.
The
Yeah,
team up north reminds us that every day.
yeah, yeah. And for instance, a lot of the problems that we have in Clemson, offensive line. I mean, we had a 5-star. He was our highest rated player, tied for highest rated in that 2021 class. And because of a lack of development, I mean, I watched him this past year get knocked on his butt by Charleston Southern. And so if you're not developing players along the the offensive line and then turn around, think about this, Eric. You just pointed out that you have one of the best wide receiver coaches in the country. Now you have Chip Kelly as the OC. You have Ryan Day, who knows how to develop these quarterbacks. So you have all of this elite coaching, so it makes it that much worse. So
Yeah.
let's switch over to the other side of the ball. Let's talk about
Sure.
that defense. You guys have what, 9 returning starters, something like that.
Yeah, it's sick.
Let's just talk about this, and we'll get into your schedule in just a second. But I'm looking at your schedule, not to run through it real quick, but you have and I hate to pick on Penn State, but I'll believe in Penn State the day that,
Feel
well,
free.
yeah, I just don't believe in Penn State. I mean, it's just Penn State.
I don't think Penn State believes in Penn State, Brian.
They don't, and I think that they realize that the guy they have coaching for them, he's not a bad coach, but he's not the one who's going to get them to the promised land. And
Yeah.
if I'm you guys, I'm happy. I'm like, keep him there. Please keep him there. But you have Oregon, you have Michigan, but you have a really, really manageable schedule. So let's talk about how that defense will probably rip apart, 10 out of 12 teams easily.
Yeah. So I have picked up some of John Kennedy's tendencies, you could say, Brian. And so I've become extremely petty, and I've tried to look for things to get petty about. We play Akron game 1, right? Like, it's Akron. It's not like LeBron James is coming back to Akron, okay? It's where he's from, by the way. Um Akron's coached by Joe Moorhead. Joe
Yeah.
Moorhead was the offensive coordinator for Oregon when Oregon came into Ohio Stadium in 2021 and ran the same offensive play to the left side over and over and over again, and we never adjusted to stop the stinking play. And I've gotten so petty that I am like, I want to beat Akron 100-0 and not even let them cross the midfield line. Like that's how I am right now. So, and if we have the defense to do it, that's the thing. This defense is scary, scary good, Brian. You've got 2 5-star top 10 recruits who came back for their senior year. Both could have went to the pros, and JT Tumulal and Jack Sawyer. Both would have been probably second, third round draft picks who said, you know what, we could do better. I can do better. We're going to do better. And so they came back. They're going to be first round draft picks if they have the year that we think they're going to have. You've got Ty Hamilton in the middle of that defense, whose older brother, plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars, whose Ty has had the exact same trajectory as his brother. Was a 3-star, developed, and now is a fifth-year senior and is looking to knock some heads in the middle of that defensive line. And I didn't even talk about our 5-star for your neck of the woods on the defensive line, and Tyleek Williams. So this defensive line is just sick. And then if you go back to the backside of the defense, which is also a strength, you've got Denzel Burke, who I mentioned earlier, who I think is probably, if not then one of the best cornerbacks in the country. You've got on the flip side of him, you got Ziggy, or Iggy as we call him, Davison Igbinosun, who came from Ole Miss, started for Ole Miss as a freshman. He's a junior now, right? So he's ready to rock and roll. He played phenomenally well last year as a sophomore. So we got returning starters on the edges. Oh, by the way, we picked up another guy from Alabama after Nick Saban decided to retire, and Caleb Downs, who led Alabama last year in tackles as a freshman. And here's some news for you, Brian. Caleb Downs, Ryan Day this past week, just let the cat out of the bag. Oh yeah, Caleb Downs might run the football and offense a little bit too. Yeah, that's how good that cat is. You got Lathan Ransom, who is a senior who's come back again. What might have been a late, third day pick. He's come back. He's ready to rock and roll. Jordan Hancock, who's dealt with some injuries, he's come back to play in the nickel corners position. This team is loaded. Oh, then by the way, we also have some 4 and 5-star freshmen backing them up as well, who we're excited to see get on the field, and Aaron Scott Jr. and some of those guys as well. Bryce West is his name. Who we're looking forward to seeing them play. And then we had guys who were freshmen last year who played. Malik Hartford for one of them. Then Lorenzo Styles Jr. might get in a little playing time. Calvin Simpson Hunt, who was a high 4-star. So, yeah, the defense is loaded. Now, the only question on defense, and I think it's going to be good, I think that they're going to be better than people realize, is our linebacker play. We did lose 2 linebackers who started for the past 2 years, and Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers both went to the NFL. How are we going to replace them? Well, Cody Simon is a graduate senior this year. He's dealt with injuries over his career. He got in a lot of games last year. He was that third linebacker. He's going to center the defense this year. And then we put 5-star CJ Hicks, who's ready to go, who's a junior this year. And then we moved down from safety, Sonny Styles, so Lorenzo Styles Jr.'s younger brother, Sonny Styles, who was a 5-star as well. He's now playing in his natural position of linebacker. His daddy, Lorenzo Styles Sr., who played in the NFL, that's where he played when he was a legendary linebacker for Ohio State. This defense is loaded. And yes, the linebackers are all new, Brian, but there's so much talent there that I would not be surprised that by the time we get to the midseason, we look at this linebacker play and they're playing better than what we had last year because they're faster, they're more athletic, and I think they're going to make life really, really bad for those quarterbacks in the Big Ten when they decide they're going to do some blitzing when you have the talent we have on the defensive line as well.
We've got some great trash talk going on in the chat
Oh,
section.
I
If you hadn't
bet.
checked it out, it is fantastic, and I'm loving. I'm glad everybody's in here. Everybody, I have Eric Boggs here from the Ohio Podcast. Hope you will drop over there and say hello to him. Let him know that you saw him on my show. Also, check out the College Huddle. We're
Yes,
part of the College Huddle, just a bunch of renegade maverick YouTube podcasters who just will tell us the truth about their team. So check that out. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I hope you will. We'll move on from there. Let's talk about that schedule for just a second.
yeah, let's do
I'm
that.
not. You open up, and by the way, folks, I'm going to tell you this. I used to hate Cupcake at the beginning. Now I love it. We open with Georgia this year. It's like,
Have
oh my
fun.
God, yeah, great. 2 weeks later, NC State. 2 weeks later, well, 3 weeks counting the bye, Florida State. It's like, I wished we had some easier games so we could kind of get some continuity, see what's working, see what needs work. You guys actually get that. You
We
open up
don't
with it.
we don't hardly ever do this. Like, we usually play a tough out of conference schedule. Notre Dame last year. Next year we have Texas. We have Alabama on the schedule down the road. We have Georgia on the schedule down the road. Just like you guys, we usually play at least one really good out of conference game. I'm not really sure how this happened. I think what happened was we had a home and away with Washington,
Mm-hmm.
and then they decided to join the Big Ten. So it was like, can't do that now. And so they're like, who do we throw in here? So we got Marshall, which is
Well,
funny
yeah.
because Marshall beat Notre Dame a couple years ago. Sorry, John.
Yeah. That would be a tough one. Did you open up with Akron? You talked about that, the Fighting LeBron James. Western Michigan. Then you're off on the 14th. On the 21st, you play Marshall. Then you're at Michigan State, going to play Jonathan Smith for the first time.
Yep,
He has his work cut out for him. I like him as a coach. I think the
I do
guy
too.
that the guy can coach. I mean, Oregon State, whether it's his alma mater or not, which it is, but whether it's no matter how much you love your school, that is a really tough job. He did really, really well there. But you have them. You play Kurt Ferentz. If you can score 14 points against Kurt Ferentz, you've won the ball game. Kurt can't score
Gosh,
over 10.
what a joke, man.
Yeah,
That guy was coaching literally before face masks. He's been there forever, man.
yeah. It's and what's so funny is some of the great tight ends that have come out of that, and you're like, how did they were hidden talent. Anyway, you have at Oregon, and that's going to be the first true test.
Yep.
It's at Oregon. Dan Lanning can coach.
Mhm.
Dan Lanning didn't want anything to do with Alabama and taking over that whole gig because he's got such a good gig going on. So that will be a great game, one of the biggest of the year for college football. You're off on the 19th. You play Matt Rule in Nebraska. I'm a guy who believes that Matt Rule can actually coach, and don't be shocked in 2 years if this team's not doing a lot better than what they have been doing. He's really good at doing stuff like that. I could care less if he failed in the NFL. The NFL is just, ugh, it's blah. But anyway, at Penn State, you get to play the Fighting James Franklins. They'll strain real hard, pop a hemorrhoid, and still lose. You'll play Purdue. We know how that's going to go. You're at Northwestern. You have Indiana. I mean, they got Frank Signetti or whatever his name is. He's coaching there now.
Kirk Signetti, yeah.
Kirk Signetti, Frank.
Yeah. Frank's his brother.
Frank's his brother. He's a butcher down at the shop.
Yeah.
And then you play at Michigan. Michigan, they no longer have Harbaugh.
We get Michigan in our house this year.
At y'all's house.
Yeah,
Really?
they come to see us.
Okay. I'm sorry. Oh well, yes. I'm for some reason I saw something else and I was like, what was that? Anyway, but the point is, you really have a 2-game season. You really do. And before you get to that first really big game, I mean, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games before it, and a bye week built in there, and a bye week after it. So you guys are set up pretty well.
Everybody has 2 byes this year, right?
Probably.
I think so. I think everybody's got 2 byes.
But you guys are set up quite well.
Yes, it is a manageable schedule. I agree. There are some interesting things on the schedule, Brian, that Ohio State fans don't like to admit, that I will let you know. First off, factoid. Did you know the team in the Big Ten who has the most wins against Ohio State since the year 2000 up until last year when we lost the third straight time to the team up north is Purdue?
Hmm.
Does that shock you to learn that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Purdue had our number for a while. Jim Tressel lost to him a couple times. Urban Meyer went into West Lafayette, Indiana in a night game
I
and
remember that.
crapped the
I
bed.
remember that one.
Okay. So that, yeah, I think we're going to beat Purdue easily, but because it's at home, I I think they're only in year 2 of the rebuild of Ryan Walters there in Purdue. But interesting one on that one. Ohio State never goes into Happy Valley and blows Penn State out. It doesn't happen. We are their biggest rival. We look at them the same way that team up north looks at Michigan State. They're our secondary rival, and to them, we are their rival. So they always get up to play that game tough. If it's a big noon game, we'll probably win by a couple scores. If it's a whiteout, it's going to be a white knuckler, man. It always is. It always is. Their quarterback is from the state of Ohio, wanted to be a Buckeye. We never offered him. He goes to Penn State. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder. Not that I'm sweating bullets here in June about that game, Brian, but when it gets closer, I'll get a little bit nervous. I'll spend a little bit more time on the toilet that week just because I know it's not going to be easy. Okay. Uh, so that, there is that one. I'll be honest with you. I think here's one for you. Get ready to be shocked. I think Ohio State avoids the second best team in the Big Ten.
Who is that?
Rutgers. Look at their schedule, Brian. Go look at their schedule. Look at who they have coming back. Look at how they almost beat us last year. I know you're like, Eric, get out of here. What do what are you smoking? Rutgers
Most
will
of the
have
time, yeah.
Rutgers will have the third best record in the Big Ten after Ohio State and Oregon. If I said second, I'm sorry, I meant third. They will shock some people. My prediction is Rutgers will make the college football playoff this year.
Now I see Shiano.
Now,
I see. Yeah.
Brian, what will you think if Rutgers and Clemson play in the first round of the college football playoff? Huh? You think that's an auto dub?
Let me tell you this. If we just get to the playoff this year,
That's where you're at. Just get there.
If we can just get it, I'm going to keep my feelings to myself about my team right now. I'm going to try to stay on Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, Shiano can coach. I know that a lot of people, I know that the state of Tennessee didn't want him up there because of this, that, and the other, and that's good and stuff. But Matt Shiano can, or Greg Shiano can, why am I messing up names tonight?
Matt's his other brother, yeah.
Matt's his brother.
He's friends with Frank Signa.
He's friends. He's actually a State Farm agent. No, Greg Schiano. My God, I'm messing up everything. Greg Schiano can coach. Greg Schiano
he's in year number 5.
Yeah,
he has rebuilt that program and his image and his likeness again, just like he had it back in the old Ray Rice days, right?
Yeah.
They've got a running back who I think is probably the third best running back in the Big Ten, right after the pair and the spare that we got at Ohio State. They've got a new quarterback who can actually throw the football. See, that was part of their problem last year. They won more games than they lost without a quarterback who couldn't throw the football. And, I'm serious. That's how good they were. They had us beat, Brian. They literally had us beat. That I'm telling you, Rutgers is scary good.
Well, here's a you brought up Ray Rice, and it's time for an inappropriate joke. I heard this team is a real knockout.
Yeah, they want to fight you in the elevator.
They want to punch you in an elevator while the security camera.
Oh, that's terrible.
Please, God, I'm sorry. Please, my children are going to be born naked. Oh no. So with that said, I mean, your schedule. I'm sitting here looking at Rutgers now. Um,
Yeah, we don't play them, thank God. Woo!
yeah,
No,
yeah.
look at that
So
schedule, Brian. Look at it. It's it is softer than a baby's butt, man.
Howard, Akron, VT, Washington, Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA, at Southern Cal, Minnesota, Maryland, Illinois, and at Michigan State.
No
And
Michigan, no Ohio State, no Penn State,
no Penn
no
State,
Oregon.
no Oregon. Oh my God, you're right.
So I'm
You're
telling
right.
you,
Oh,
the
we might see it.
schedule makers went, no, we're going to get another team in the playoffs.
Well, so let's as we're kind of winding down a touch. I'm not saying completely. Uh, um, somebody, great comment, Christopher Wilds.
That's my co-host.
I know, that's fantastic. By the way, guys, go check out the Ohio podcast. We're not going to sue them for using the name Ohio in it. In fact, I'm now thinking about changing my name from Clemson Football Live because I could get a cease and desist order. Anyway, so let's talk about the teams that you kind of hit on it, but let's talk about any teams that scare you. Obviously, you got to get past Michigan. I believe, as an outsider looking in, you guys get past them. I really, really do. I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. I think you guys get past them. You named out Purdue. Even as an outsider looking in, I'm going to jump Purdue here for a second, go to Penn State. I've noticed that anytime it's in Happy Valley, you always go back and forth, and you're like, we've got them, and y'all end up winning. And that's happened so much. Other than Penn State and Michigan, and you touched on Purdue, is there anybody else
There's Oregon.
that makes you?
Oh, there's Oregon.
Yeah, there's Oregon. Yes, duh.
I mean, here's another crazy prediction of
Oregon.
mine. I think we play Oregon 3 times this season. I think
conference championship.
My prediction is we lose to Oregon and Eugene. We beat Oregon in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship. Oregon plays us in the Final Four in college football playoff. And the newest, biggest rivalry in sports is born. And we're calling it the Nike Bowl. Oregon and Ohio State are the two biggest Nike colleges out there. Nike loves us, and they obviously love Oregon, right? I would love to see these two schools create a new tradition when we play each other. It's called the Nike Bowl, and the loser has to take off his Nikes, walk them to the middle of the field, and hand them to the winning coach as the trophy. Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be cool. That would be cool. Is there any other team outside of Oregon? And I'm even going to leave Penn State out of this. I'm sorry, Penn State has just become the recent Texas until Texas finally did something. They're always been shoved down there. They're good. They're going to be great. And then they blow it. I'm going to leave Penn State out of that. Obviously Michigan, obviously Oregon. Is there anyone else that you're sitting there going, we might want to pay attention to that's on your schedule?
On our schedule?
On your schedule that you could see maybe them doing the unthinkable.
I mean, the Thundering Herd did beat Notre Dame a couple of years ago. No, that's it, man. That's literally it. There, I've looked at, say, what's the trap game? Is it Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot take Kirk Ferentz seriously. I can't do it. He's not a serious football coach. He is stuck in the 1970s. I can't do it. I thought, well, Indiana's a G5 All-Star team. That's literally who they are now. They are a G5 All-Star team. Cignetti is introduced as Indiana's coach and goes out there on the basketball court and goes, Michigan sucks, Ohio State sucks, and Purdue sucks. And the fans go crazy. And it's like, dude, do you coach for Indiana? I mean, do you really want to poke that bear? That's not happening. Because, I'm like, that's the game before the game, right?
Right.
I just don't see it. I think this schedule sets up to where you're right. It to us, it's a 3-game schedule. And I know Penn State's probably the third on that list. And I'm not so sure that, given the roster that Michigan has, that Sharon Moore won't lose this team by the middle of the season. They have zero depth up there. They've got some really, really good defensive players. but they have no depth. And if a handful of those guys get hurt, he's playing with a bunch of 3-star freshmen and sophomores. And they love to talk about how they develop, but that development was 5 and 6-year seniors last year, sprinkled in with a couple really good juniors. That's what that team was last year. And if they think they're just going to walk into Columbus, Ohio, and win a fourth time without Connor Stallions telling them the football plays this year, they've got they've got a thing coming their way. I don't know that they make it to Columbus, Ohio with only one loss on their schedule. I could see them having 2, 3, maybe even 4 losses on their schedule if they endure some injuries, because that roster is not nearly as deep as it has been in the past. They have 5 new offensive linemen starting on that team. 5. All 5 starters gone. So we'll see. We'll see how they do. Are they going to be good? Yeah, I think they start the season off pretty good, but they've got a much more difficult schedule this year than what we have. And then the roles were reversed last year. We had a much more difficult schedule last year than what they had.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, because the championship happens for them. They're very excited. Michigan finally, and I don't have a dog in the fight, or a Wolverine or a Buckeye or whatever. But they win. Harbaugh leaves. There's talent that leaves. That seniority along the line. Blocking matters, as Clemson fans knows this. But yeah, I was like, I think once again, I'm not part of the rivalry.
Listen,
just looking from the outside.
Half that coaching staff left with him, Brian.
Mm.
They knew they were going to get show causes. They knew they were screwed. And so they got out before they had to worry about it. The hamburger gate thing happened where he, gave a recruit a hamburger that wasn't supposed to. And that's what Michigan tells you. He had a recruit on campus illegally during COVID season. Okay. That's what it's about. And he got in trouble for that. Well, they did not name who the coaches were that got show causes. Go look it up. You can't find it anywhere. Those coaches are in the NFL. That's why. Okay. So, and I don't think the NCAA is done with them. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. What's going on? What's going to go on with them? Let's talk about postseason. Now, the playoff was tripled in size. Making the playoff is much easier for a lot of teams. There's a part of that I struggle with, just as I'm more of a numerical guy. I'm more of an analyst. I never played the game. I've never coached the game other than, rec sports for my sons and so on. But I am one of those guys who sits down, and I really understand from my professional life. You move some variables around, kind of like y'all were talking about your offensive line coach. You've got all this brilliant coaching around, and this offensive line coach can mess up everything. He can mess up everything. Like, I mean, he could have your quarterbacks running for their lives, and then your wide receivers who are fantastic. The plays breaking down. They're like, oh crap, I can't even go through my progression of running my route. And you have that issue. Travion Henderson would suffer and so on. But I'm a big variables guy. Like I'm kind of like an analytical approach. But there are going to be some teams who sneaks into that 12 that has no business being in the 12, and we know this. That's going to happen. And I have been very open to the Clemson fans that I would rather Clemson be left out of the college football playoff than, if they're not ready for it at this time in the Dabo Swinney era, they go in, they get TCU'd. Nobody thinks about that great TCU season anymore. All they remember is a 58-point emasculation in the national championship by Georgia. So Ohio State definitely seems like, between talent, schedule, the pressure that's on the head coach, the talent in coaching overall, you guys are going to contend with Georgia. Kirby Smart, and remember, for everyone who's watching this that is not really familiar with the geographical location of Georgia and Clemson, they're within 2 hours of one another. I mean, they're very, very close to one another, recruit the same players. And I can tell you this, and as much as I hate it because I don't like Georgia, He's running a whole different thing down there. I mean, this guy was 3 points from winning his 30th straight game, third consecutive SEC championship, and probably going to go in and maybe win a third national championship, and 3 points kept him out. You guys, do you believe that with the offensive line play, do you believe that if you went head to head with Georgia, you think you could beat them?
Can I? You said you don't like the Bulldogs, right? So if I make Bulldogs mad, it's okay.
I could care less.
Ryan Day outcoached Kirby Smart that day. He coached circles around that guy. Georgia had the better roster that day than Ohio State did. Let's just be honest. They did. And Ryan Day coached angry. That's why we want angry Ryan Day. He was aggressive that day, and Kirby was not ready for that. And this roster's better than they were those years ago. So is Georgia's roster as good as they were when we played them and almost beat them when they won their first national championship? I don't think so. Maybe close to being as good, but this Ohio State roster is much better than what that one was outside of CJ Stroud at quarterback. Now, I know that can make a big difference. It
Yeah.
absolutely can. But the weapons that this team has, especially on the defensive side, I think can win a national championship. So, can we give Georgia a run for their money? I want to find out. I know that there have been sometimes I've looked at my team and go, I don't want to find out. The
Yeah.
national championship against Alabama, I knew defensively we were screwed. We did not have that unit at national championship level. And I don't know how it is for Clemson, but it's been this way for Ohio State a lot of times. We've had either a national championship defense, but the offense wasn't there, or vice versa. It feels like this year we have both a national championship offense and defense ready to go, ready to rock and roll. And I think that's part of the excitement that Ohio State fans feel.
I can definitely understand that. Being honest with yourself about your team is very hard. And
It's
then
humbling
when
sometimes.
yeah. I had someone ask me the other day on one of my videos, said, why do you complain all the time about Clemson and this or that? And my response was, well, basically, when they fix this thing, they'll be back to that championship contender mindset and the ability to go into a playoff and not just be happy to be there, actually be a legitimate force. But until they fix this, we're going to be, doing the whole 9-10 win season thing. Maybe we can win ACC championship deal. And that's a decline from where we were at. So, being honest about your team is a big deal. And I appreciate everything that you've said and everything that that you've talked about. You know what? I realize I've had you on here the entire time, Eric, and you're the first guest in a long time that I have not done the airing of the grievances. While you were here, everything has been going so well. I can't really complain about anything, but I feel like I'm doing you an injustice if I don't do the airing of the grievances, and I need to figure out something. Would you give me a topic that really ticks you off about either college football, about your team, or about anything, and then I'm going to do the airing. This is going to be off the cuff, folks. I don't know if it's going to be any good, but I want you to go for it. Go.
Notre Dame needs to join a conference. I'm sorry. This side chick ACC thing that they have going on does you guys a disservice too, I think.
Okay.
Because if they were, hey, listen, Notre Dame should be like, we're all in with the ACC. If Notre Dame joined the ACC tomorrow, do you guys still have a conference when this is all said and done? I think you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
do. I think Notre Dame has done the same thing to ACC that they have done to the Big Ten for years. They want to have a side chick. They don't want to be serious about the relationship that they want to be in. And as much as I love John Kennedy, and I have a lot of Notre Dame friends, this independence thing that they hold on to is an idol. And as Catholics, they should know better because this they've got to let that go. Notre Dame is in the Big Ten in hockey. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yes, they're already in our conference in hockey, and they're in the ACC in every other sport they play. but yet their football team is too good to be in a conference. Let it go. Join a conference. Be like the rest of. You're not that special. Who are the other independent schools that are special? Connecticut? No, thank you. They're not special. Not at football. Who else is there? I don't know. BYU? What did they do? The Mormons even joined a conference.
They did.
Come on, Notre Dame.
Here
Let
we
it
go, folks. Folks, it's time for the airing of the grievances. He just did it, but I'm going to tack on just because, well, I like to play this clip because it is going.
With the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people.
Hey, listen, when COVID happened, who saved your tail, Notre Dame? Huh? Who was it? Who was it? Did you save your own? Nope, you joined the ACC. Do you know how far you are from the Atlantic coast? You're a long way from the Atlantic coast. The Big Ten didn't want you, but we down here with the ACC, I mean, we're paying people $20 per game. $20 per game, but for you to leave our conference, $500 million to get out of here. Someone doesn't own a calculator. Listen to me. You've got all that history. And by the way, your national championship, that's far back in history. We're talking about 1988. Michael Jackson was still black. That's how long ago that was. Okay, so you need to join a conference, all right? We're tired of wiping you little slobber. We're tired of acting like you're okay. You need to get over it. Folks, that's the airing of the grievances.
With the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people.
I hope I don't get a community strike for that one.
Hey, man. We've been living on strike 2 on our show for a while.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Eric, tell us where we can find you.
Guys, we're on YouTube. You just look it up, the OHIO podcast, or as like Brian likes to call us, the Ohio podcast.
That's what I do. It's just the Ohio podcast. It's easier.
The best way is just go to our website, theohiopodcast.com. We write articles. We have a good time over there. You can find all of our social media accounts. Gosh, it's a lot of fun. We have a great community, as you guys have been enjoying in the chat. A lot of people follow us around when we go different places and different channels and things, and we have a lot of fun, man. So we have a Thursday night call-in show. So if you've got nothing going on a Thursday night and you want to chat football with us, sometimes we're not talking Buckeyes. We're talking about college football in general. We have a Purdue guy who calls us all the time. We even had a Team Up North guy call us and talk to us, and we had a great conversation.
Sure.
He wasn't. Sure. He was a minority in their fan base. He wasn't, delusional, but it was a good time with him. So you want to be a Clemson fan and call in and talk to us? We'd be happy to chat college football with you. And listen, you know what? I know Woody Hayes. I know the history. Okay. I know the 31-0. I know. I get it. I understand. You have a lot to rub in our faces. Go ahead. But at the end of the day, man, we're all college football fans, and we all want Notre Dame to join a conference.
We all want Notre Dame to join the conference. For goodness sakes, for Michael Jackson's sake.
Yes.
Join a flipping conference. But Greg, Eric, thanks for coming up. I said Greg. What is my problem? I need to have my wife check me for like.
Greg is not my brother, but I do have an uncle named Greg.
You have an uncle named Greg?
Well, actually, no, it's a second cousin. Sorry, it'd be my dad's cousin, so it'd be a second cousin. I have a second cousin named Greg.
You could have. What I did was I was looking down at your name, Eric.
Yeah.
And I took Eric and some of the G's in there and turned it into Greg.
Well,
I need that. Yes.
Yesterday, or the last show, I had a 00 jersey on. 00, and someone called me Eric Boogs, Boogs, and it made me laugh because when telemarketers get a hold of me, they go, "Is Mr. Eric Boogs there?" And I was like, I understand your language.
He is. I'm here. I'm here. Do you want to sell me some of those Jinsu knives or whatever they're called? I'll take them. And then you can give them Christopher's credit card. That'd be fun. That'd be great. Well, thanks for coming on the show and talking about your team. And again, everybody who's watching this, if you're still watching this at the over 1 hour mark, I believe it is really, really good for fan bases to get out of their community and really see what's out there, because you might figure out that your team is not as good as maybe they should be, maybe what other teams are doing to become more competitive. Ohio State looks like they're really on to something, and in my opinion, they're definitely, I'm not an Ohio State fan, but they look like they are definitely a real solid contender, not to kind of walk into the playoff and get in at number 12 or number 11. I think these guys are going to be a top contender for the national championship. And as much as it pains me to say that, I think they definitely can go head-to-head with Georgia. We will see as the season goes on. Eric, thanks for coming on. Appreciate everybody. Go over there and say hey to him. Drop a line to him and let him know that you saw him on my show. Also, if you're new here, hey, I talk about Clemson all the time, but I do have other guests on. The Florida State guys on the other day, had some NC State guys on. I even have some Clemson guys who come on my show and we talk about the Tigers and so on. So I hope you'll subscribe. It is free. I do appreciate it. Folks, you take care of yourself. And as always, even to you Buckeyes, go Tigers.
Go Buckeyes.